Shen Zhiwei, the most renowned perfumer of the Day Dynasty, possesses the remarkable ability to concoct the ephemeral scents of love and hatred from the mundane flora of the world that a royal edict transformed her into a captive of the regent prince, Xiao Linyuan. This prince, a figure of immense power, cold and bloodthirsty, harbors within him a fleeting memory of a bygone luminescence. Shen Zhiwei, it seems, is but a mere instrument for him to resurrect that lost light that he grips her chin, his gaze is frigid as ice. You are merely a craftsman with a modicum of skill in perfumery. The sole value of your existence lies in reviving her scent. Thus, she exhausts her very essence, immersing herself in her craft, striving repeatedly to create a fragrance named Qingrou. She believes that if she can produce the perfect scent, it will grant her freedom. Little does she know, in this tormenting romance entwined with fragrance, what she sacrifices is her very heart, that it is only when the true white moonlight resurrects that she awakens to the bitter truth. She has always been nothing more than a disposable spice, a clumsy substitute. When she, cloaked in blood, leaps from the heights, vanishing completely from his world, Xiao Linyuan descends into madness, realizing that what he cherished was not the ethereal memory of a past love, but rather Shen Zhiwei, whose cool demeanor belied the warmth of her fingertips as she crafted his perfumes. That it is too late. His away will never return. Chapter 1. Captive Fragrance. The early winter snow falls lightly yet densely, with fine flakes mingling with the biting wind, piercing through the bones like daggers. Inside the warm hall of the regent prince's residence, however, it feels as balmy as spring. Premium silver charcoal burns vigorously in the beast-head bronze stove, producing no trace of smoke, only a gentle warmth. The air is infused with an unusual fragrance, the top notes of crisp plum blossom, transitioning to the sweet citrus at mid, and settling into a distant base of sandalwood. These three scents, distinct yet strangely intertwined, create a disquieting complexity that, when inhaled for too long, leaves one feeling somewhat unsettled. Shen Zhiwei kneels on the ground, her flowing black hair framing her pallid face, accentuating her already wan complexion. Before her, on a low zeatonwood table, lie dozens of small white porcelain vials, each tightly sealed with cork stoppers. This marks her third failure in concocting a fragrance for the regent prince, Xiao Linyuan. That is not the scent. The man, seated in a position of power, finally speaks. His voice is as cold and devoid of warmth as the weather, yet possesses the deep, melodious quality of a fine guqing. Shen Zhiwei's fingertips tremble slightly, betraying her anxiety. She raises her gaze to meet the eyes of the man who holds her fate in his hands. Today, Xiao Linyuan is clad in a dark gold-embroidered python robe, his ink-black hair secured with a white jade hairpin. His handsome visage resembles that of a celestial being, with piercing phoenix eyes that scrutinize everything with a casual indifference, as if the world is merely dust beneath. His feat, another failure. His patience is finite. How many days can I endure? Shen Zhiwei's heart sinks that a month ago, she was celebrated as the premier perfumer of Day, sought after for a mere whiff of her fragrant essence. Yet in a single night, the Shen family was ensnared in a treasonous plot. With her entire household imprisoned, it was this powerful regent prince who invited her from the dungeons to confine her within this resplendent palace. There is no torture, no interrogation, only one demand: to replicate the scent of his white moonlight. How can anyone discern the aroma of a person who has been dead for 5 years? Xiao Linyuan provides her with scant clues: snow, warmth, sunlight, and bodhi. What kind of clues are these? They seem like the ravings of a madman. My lord. Shen Zhiwei lowers her eyelids, her voice steady. The essence of fragrance is elusive, reliant on memory, and varies from person to person. After 5 years, the scent in your memory may have long since changed. Her implication is clear. You have erred. Do not burden me, a mere craftsman, with your mistakes. Xiao Linyuan's gaze sharpens suddenly, akin to a hawk locking onto its prey. He rises slowly, advancing towards her with deliberate steps. His towering figure casts a shadow that envelopes her completely. An overwhelming sense of pressure envelopes her, mixed with a faint whiff of ambergris and a unique, chilling scent of blood, characteristic of one who has long wielded the power of life and death. He kneels before her, his long fingers grasping her delicate chin, compelling her to meet his gaze. His fingertips are icy and rough, yet possess an astonishing strength, as though he could crush her bones. Changed? He scoffs, though the mirth does not reach his eyes. Shen Zhiwei, do not attempt to deceive me. You are the foremost perfumer of Day, and even the emperor has declared that there is no scent you cannot create. What? Is it impossible for you here? His breath brushes her cheek, laced with an unsettling intimacy and danger. Shen Zhiwei's heart skips a beat, so close. She can distinctly see his long, thick eyelashes and the reflection of her own disheveled self in the unfathomable depths of his eyes. I do not dare, she manages to force out, her throat constricted with pain. You had better not. Xiao Linyuan's tone grows ever colder. Your father and brother await in the dungeons. Their lives depend on your nose. Create the fragrance, and they shall live. Fail to do so. His words trail off, but the unspoken threat lingers, more chilling than any statement could be. Shen Zhiwei closes her eyes, her long lashes fluttering like butterfly wings. Her family is her only vulnerability that I grant you 3 more days. Xiao Linyuan releases her, as if her very presence sullies his hands, and he methodically wipes his fingers with a pristine white handkerchief. In 3 days, I expect to smell the scent from your memories. Otherwise, you shall join them in the dungeons. With that, he discards the handkerchief disdainfully at her feet and turns to leave. Shen Zhiwei gazes at the cloth that has fallen beside her, a sharp pain stabbing at her heart. Humiliation, anger, and helplessness intertwine, nearly leaving her breathless. She is a descendant of a great perfumer, having grown up among countless fragrant materials, possessing an extraordinary sensitivity and talent for scents. Her hands are meant to create elegance and beauty, not to appease the vain memories of a man. Yet now, both she and her family have become mere ants in his grasp. Compelled by an inexplicable force, she speaks, her voice trembling with an emotion she scarcely recognizes. My lord, your obsession with this scent, is it truly for that person? Or, for the time that cannot be reclaimed? Xiao Linyuan halts abruptly. He slowly turns, his eyes glacial enough to freeze the warmth of the hall. You presume to conjecture my thoughts? Shen Zhiwei meets his gaze, unwavering this time. Her eyes shine with clarity and defiance, resembling a plum blossom that refuses to bend in the cold wind. I do not dare. However, the art of perfumery is intertwined with humanity. Without emotion, how can there be fragrance? If you refuse to share even a hint about that departed soul, then no matter my skill, I can only produce a lifeless imitation. She pauses, articulating each word. That is not perfumery. It is sacrilege. This is her final bastion of pride. Silence envelopes the air like a shroud. Xiao Linyuan studies her, and for the first time, a crack appears on his perpetually indifferent face. He seems taken aback that this seemingly fragile woman dares to negotiate with him in such a manner. After a moment, he suddenly laughs. It is a laugh laced with the utmost ridicule. Well, what a sacrilege! He strides back, drawing near, bending to bring his handsome face close to her neck, akin to a beast scenting its prey. His nose nearly brushes against her skin, the chill of his breath igniting a shiver within her. Shen Zhiwei stiffens, her blood seeming to freeze in that instant. This act is too intimate, too humiliating. He is scenting me, as one would an object. You are, indeed, untainted. Xiao Linyuan's voice is low, akin to a whisper, yet carries a bone-chilling coldness. There is no lingering aroma. Excellent. He straightened up, gazing down at her with an expression brimming with disdain and condescension. Do you wish to know? This king shall divulge it to you. He leisurely strolled to the window, observing the delicate snowflakes swirling outside, his gaze becoming somewhat distant, as if he were ensnared in a far-off memory. Her name was Qingrou. She was the sole beacon of light in this king's life. His voice was soft, yet it carried the weight of 1,000 burdens. She perished on the battlefield in the Northern Territory 5 years ago, sacrificing herself to save me. The fragrance that lingered on her was the only warmth I could sense amidst that heavy snowfall. Shen Zhiwei's heart clenched sharply. So she was a savior. No wonder he was so obsessive. All you need to remember, Xiao Linyuan turned his head, his gaze once again transforming into a cold, sharp blade that pierced directly through her, is that your only value lies in replicating the essence of Qingrou.as for you, Shen Zhiwei. He paused, a cruel smile curving his lips. You are merely a shadow of her, a substitute. Do not dare to covet anything that does not belong to you. Shadow, substitute. These 2 words struck Shen Zhiwei's heart like venomous daggers, brutally shattering her pride and spirit. In that moment it dawned on her that she was not even considered an independent being. She was simply a reflection of another woman. At that moment, a respectful announcement from outside the door interrupted. My lord, Dr. Gu has arrived. As the words fell, a young man dressed in a pale moon-white long robe entered. He was slender, with a gentle countenance, and an aura of scholarly grace that starkly contrasted with the oppressive atmosphere of the royal residence. The newcomer was none other than Gu Qingzi, the heir of Yaowang Valley. Upon entering, Gu Qingzi immediately noticed Shen Zhiwei kneeling on the ground, amidst the chaos of her fragrance tools. He furrowed his brow slightly, a flicker of compassion crossing his gaze. My lord, he inclined his head respectfully towards Xiao Linyuan, yet his attention was drawn to Shen Zhiwei's pale face. Miss Shen, what has happened? Xiao Linyuan, with an expression devoid of emotion, returned to his seat and picked up the cold tea on the table, stating coolly, "It is merely a matter of perfumery. Dr. Gu's arrival is timely. My headache has recurred today." Gu Qingxi sighed, retrieving a set of golden needles from his medicinal box and approaching Xiao Linyuan's side. His gaze, however, subtly drifted back to the frail figure still kneeling on the ground, appearing as though she might shatter at any moment. Shen Zhiwei lowered her head, her long eyelashes concealing all emotions. No one noticed that beneath her voluminous sleeves, her hands were tightly clenched, her nails nearly embedding themselves into her palms. Blood trickled out, drop by drop. It did not hurt, not nearly as much as the wound named Substitute that throbbed in her heart. Chapter 2: The Unintentional Fragrance. Gu Qingxi's golden acupuncture needle was as thin as a cow's hair, silently piercing the acupuncture points, only to quiver slightly and emit a faint buzzing sound, reminiscent of butterfly wings fluttering. Xiao Linyuan, with his eyes closed, leaned back in a grand chair draped in white tiger fur, his tightly furrowed brows gradually relaxing under the soothing touch of the needle. Within the warm room, an oppressive silence enveloped the air. Shen Zhiwei remained kneeling, her knees long since numb, akin to two stubborn stones that did not belong to her. The wound in her palm was stifled by her clenched fist, its damp and warm sensation serving as a reminder of the piercing humiliation she had just endured. Shadows, substitutes. So that was it. How could his gaze toward me ever resemble that of a living being? She thought bitterly. It was as if he looked through my skin, perceiving another person's soul. This realization tormented her far more than 1,000 cuts. After completing the acupuncture, Gu Qingxi discreetly glanced at the woman on the floor. She knelt with perfect posture, her spine taut like a tightly strung bow, as if it would snap at any moment yet stubbornly held on, unwilling to reveal even a hint of fragility. He withdrew his gaze and softly addressed Xiao Linyuan. "Your Highness, the cold has seeped into your bones. This wind-related ailment requires quiet recuperation. The mixed fragrances here are detrimental to the flow of qi and blood, likely to incite the fire of the heart." His voice was as gentle as jade, a glimmer of light in the oppressive stillness of the warm room. Xiao Linyuan did not open his eyes, but let out a cold snort from his nostrils, a perfumer who cannot create a fragrance. "Do you expect her to chant scriptures here?" Gu Qingxi frowned slightly, looking at the kneeling Shen Zhiwei, his tone gentle yet unwavering. "Your Highness, Miss Shen has been kneeling for too long. The cold has invaded her body, obstructing her qi and blood, which could also diminish the sensitivity of her nasal passages. If she falls ill because of this, would it not impede your important matters?" This statement was skillfully crafted, advocating for Shen Zhiwei while considering Xiao Linyuan's perspective. Shen Zhiwei's heart stirred, and she couldn't help but raise her eyes to the man who spoke on her behalf. For the first time in the month of her imprisonment in the palace, someone treated her as a human being, not as a tool, not as a prisoner, but as someone who could fall ill and deserve care. Xiao Linyuan finally opened his eyes, clarity illuminating his deep phoenix-like gaze. The relief from his headache improved his mood slightly, yet his scrutiny of Gu Qingxi's demeanor bore hints of curiosity and displeasure. "Dr. Gu seems to be quite protective of delicate flowers," he remarked with a tone laced with sarcasm, scanning between Gu Qingxi and Shen Zhiwei. "What makes you interested in this lowly prisoner?" Gu Qingxi remained unfazed, meeting his gaze with composure, responding serenely. The heart of a healer is akin to that of a parent. In Gu Qingxi's eyes, there are only patients, not social hierarchies. If Miss Shen were to collapse, she would still be my patient. A commendable sentiment for a healer, Xiao Linyuan remarked with a slight smirk, choosing not to pursue the topic further. He lazily waved his hand, dismissing it like an annoying fly. "Very well, for your sake, rise." The tone was undeniably one of concession. Shen Zhiwei's knees had long since stiffened. She struggled, but could not rise. Her legs felt as though they were nailed to the ground. Sharp pains radiating from her knees to her entire body. A hand extended towards her. It was a clean, slender hand with distinctly defined knuckles, perfumed with the scent of herbs. It was Gu Qingxi. Shen Zhiwei was taken aback. She looked up into his gentle and caring eyes, devoid of disdain or scrutiny. Only pure kindness. Why does this person wish to help me? She hesitated, refraining from touching that hand. In this palace, Any sudden warmth could be honey laced with venom. Noticing her immobility, Gu Qingzi was unfazed, naturally retracting his hand, and turned to Xiao Linyuan. Your Highness, may I examine the wound on Miss Shen's palm? Her hands are of utmost importance to you. Xiao Linyuan's patience had evidently waned. He let out an impatient grunt, which served as tacit approval. Only then did Gu Qingzi crouch down, softly saying, Miss Shen, please extend your hand. Shen Zhiwei suddenly realized she was still clenching her fist. The metallic scent of blood mingling with the remnants of fragrance from her nails, creating an odd aroma. She slowly opened her hand, revealing a deep crimson mark carved by her nails, already congealed into a dark red stain. Gu Qingxi's brow furrowed even deeper. He retrieved ointment and gauze from his medical kit, lowering his gaze to cleanse her wound, his movements gentle as if handling a rare treasure. The cool ointment applied to her injury brought a slight sting, yet curiously soothed some of her inner turmoil. His fingertips occasionally brushed against her palm, warm and calloused, in stark contrast to Xiao Linyuan's cold and aggressive touch. Shen Zhiwei's heart felt as though a small stone had been cast into a deep well, creating a barely perceptible ripple. She observed his focused profile, the long lashes casting a shadow beneath his eyes, and suddenly found it amusing. A stranger could offer her a semblance of dignity, while the man who preached of light regarded her as mere dust. After bandaging the wound, Gu Qingzi stood up and stepped aside, choosing not to speak further. Xiao Linyuan's gaze shifted back to Shen Zhiwei, as if the previous interlude had never occurred. He rose and sauntered to a pile of white jade porcelain vials, casually picking one up and uncorking it, bringing it to his nose to inhale. Immediately, he recoiled as if he had encountered something foul, violently shattering the porcelain vial on the ground. With a sharp crack, the vial splintered, the pale brown liquid splattering everywhere. Its fragrance of plum blossoms, citrus, and sandalwood intensifying to an overwhelming degree, dizzying those nearby. Waste. Xiao Linyuan's voice was laced with fury. Is this what you concocted? Qingrou would never use such cloying trinkets. Her fragrance is cold, pure, like the first snow falling on the leaves of the Bodhi tree in early winter. Shen Zhiwei's heart trembled violently alongside the shattered vial. She had spent 7 sleepless days and nights sifting through hundreds of ingredients to find these 3 scents closest to the essence of snow-warmed Bodhi. Yet in his words, they had become nothing more than sweet, trivial baubles. Indeed, how could she, lacking understanding of Su Qingrou, ever create her fragrance? She was merely a clumsy imitator, a soulless shadow. Xiao Linyuan seemed unsatisfied, striding into the inner chamber and emerging moments later with an object, which he forcefully tossed at Shen Zhiwei's feet. It was a somewhat worn brocade pouch, the lotus-pink satin embroidered with elegant orchids and silver thread, the stitches fine and revealing the embroiderer's care. Though the edges of the pouch showed signs of wear, it had been preserved remarkably well. A faint, delicate fragrance wafted from the pouch, an aroma she had never encountered. It was cool and ethereal, infused with a hint of medicinal scent, reminiscent of a temple atop a snow-capped mountain, where sandalwood had burned for 1,000 years, mingling with the essence of ice and snow. Smell it, Xiao Linyuan commanded from above, his voice devoid of emotion. This is the only thing Qingrou left behind. Learn what true fragrance is. Shen Zhiwei stood frozen. What a humiliation it was, to be made to smell the belongings of a rival and to imitate another woman's scent. She slowly bent down, her fingertips poised to touch the brocade pouch. Yet a black gold-embroidered boot suddenly stomped down upon it. Xiao Linyuan bent down, his extraordinarily handsome face drawing near once more, close enough for her to see the unabashed disdain and malice in his eyes. Remember, he hissed, his breath like a serpent's tongue brushing against her ear, you are merely a craftsman. Do not taint her belongings with your filthy hands that have touched countless trivial objects. His words were colder than the winter wind, each syllable piercing through her last vestiges of dignity. Shen Zhiwei felt her blood run cold in an instant. She lifted her gaze, locking eyes with him, and for the first time, a flame ignited in her cool gaze. Not love, nor hatred, but a resolute determination verging on annihilation. She suddenly laughed. That smile bloomed upon the pale visage like a crimson plum blossom flourishing in the snow, both poignant and blinding. The prince spoke the truth, she murmured, her voice unervingly calm. Indeed, a common woman like her was unworthy. After uttering these words, She withdrew her hand, no longer glancing at the silk pouch, but instead knelt upright upon the frigid ground, her eyes cast down, resembling a lifeless jade sculpture. Her silent protest struck deeper than any vehement words could. Xiao Linyuan's pupils narrowed suddenly. He had not anticipated such a reaction from her. He had envisioned her fury, her tears, her breakdown. But never had he foreseen that she would sever all with such profound tranquility, as if to convey, "You can no longer hurt me." A surge of nameless fury ignited within him, constricting his chest. He abruptly stood, kicking the pouch beneath his feet, and bellowed, "Get out." Shen Zhiwei felt as if she had been granted a reprieve. She struggled to stand, her nearly senseless legs unsteady as she stumbled toward the door, never once looking back. Qingrou watched her frail, yet resolute silhouette vanish into the wind and snow, then glanced at the ashen-faced Xiao Linyuan and the pouch that had been kicked into the corner. Ultimately, he sighed softly, gathered his medicinal box, and bowed to take his leave. Within the warm chamber, silence returned. Xiao Linyuan irritably tugged at his collar. The potent yet failed fragrance mingled with the scent of an old acquaintance wafting from the pouch, causing his head to throb. He approached and picked up the pouch, bringing it to his nose for a sniff. The familiar, cool aroma had once been his only solace during countless sleepless nights. Yet for some unknown reason, today it seemed to carry a faint, elusive essence intermingled with the lingering scent of her blood from the place where she had knelt. 3 days later, snow fell once more, this time in a sweeping deluge that enveloped the entire Regent's residence in a deadly white haze. When Shen Zhiwei was summoned to the warm chamber, her nearly bleached plain dress seemed to merge with the snow outside. Her hair was simply tied with a wooden hairpin, and her face, devoid of makeup, bore a tranquility akin to a frozen deep pool, showing not a ripple. The maids felt that in these 3 days, Miss Shen had transformed completely. Previously, though silent, a lingering gloom and unwillingness had always overshadowed her brow, much like an orchid forcibly transplanted, struggling to survive. Now, that aura had dissipated. She resembled an exquisitely delicate porcelain figure, beautiful yet utterly lifeless. Inside the warm chamber, Xiao Linyuan sat by the window, idly toying with a lotus-colored pouch while gazing somberly at the swirling snow outside. He seemed to have been seated for an eternity, not even noticing when Qingrou entered. Qingrou was present today, reportedly for a follow-up consultation. Upon seeing Shen Zhiwei enter, his gaze flickered, momentarily resting on her pallid face before lowering his eyelids to mask the concern in his eyes. "Your Highness, I am here to present the fragrance as commanded." Shen Zhiwei's voice rang out, flat and without inflection, as if reciting a scripture unrelated to herself. Only then did Xiao Linyuan come to his senses. He tucked the pouch back into his sleeve and turned to face her. When his gaze met her hollow eyes, an inexplicable pause gripped his heart, igniting a wave of irritation. What trickery is this woman employing again? He scoffed coldly, his tone unfriendly. "Where is it?" Shen Zhiwei remained silent, merely producing a plain celadone bottle from the wooden box she carried, offering it with both hands. The bottle was rough and unrefined, a stark contrast to the priceless jade vessels he typically used. Xiao Linyuan's brow furrowed deeper. He did not take it, merely gesturing to a nearby guard. The guard stepped forward, respectfully accepting the bottle and presenting it before him. He uncorked the wooden stopper. A wave of fragrance instantly wafted into the air. In that moment, Xiao Linyuan's breath caught. It was this scent, the very essence, cool and ethereal, reminiscent of the first snowfall of early winter, pure and untouched by any taint. Within the essence of snow, there lingered a faint medicinal aroma that soothed his frayed nerves. The base note was the tranquil and distant Qingrou, enveloping him in a serene silence. It was identical to the scent he remembered of Qingrou, even more pure and vivid. Yet strangely, rather than elation, he felt as though a boulder blocked his chest, rendering him breathless. This fragrance was too perfect, like a painting meticulously replicated, flawless in stroke and color, yet devoid of soul. It was beautiful, yet lifeless. It could ease his headache, but it could not console his heart. "You." Xiao Linyuan suddenly lifted his gaze, fixating on Shen Zhiwei. "How did you accomplish this?" Shen Zhiwei raised her eyelids, meeting his gaze calmly. "What the prince desired, I have delivered." Her response sounded like a statement of fact rather than a boast. Why did it feel wrong? Xiao Linyuan, agitated, rose to pace the chamber. This scent was familiar yet alien, this conflicting sensation driving him to madness. The corners of Shen Zhiwei's mouth curled into the faintest, coldest arc, almost imperceptible. Your Highness sought the fragrance of the snow-warmed Bodhi. Thus, I blended the dragon brain, snow lotus, and qi nan to evoke this snowy medicinal zen. You desired Su Qingrou's scent. Hence, I replicated it to the minutest detail. She paused, her tone still as placid as water, adding as for why it feels wrong. Perhaps it is because what the prince desired was, in essence, a lifeless thing. The term lifeless thing pierced Xiao Linyuan's ears like a needle. He abruptly halted, pivoting to stride toward Shen Zhiwei, seizing her wrist. Say that again? His eyes burned crimson, akin to an enraged beast. Shen Zhiwei winced under his grip. It did not so much as furrow her brow. She allowed him to hold her, not struggling, merely gazing at him with those hollow eyes, repeating each word. What I said is that what the prince desired is indeed a lifeless thing. You, Xiao Linyuan, unable to contain his fury, yanked her into his embrace, his other hand roughly gripping her chin, forcing her to look up at him. He lowered his head, burying his face in the crook of her neck, inhaling deeply like a beast. I must see what is amiss. This action was laden with aggression and humiliation. His warm breath caressed her skin, sending shivers coursing through her. Had this been in the past, she might have felt a mix of shame and indignation. However now, Shen Zhiwei stood rigidly, unyielding, as though the being cradled in his arms was merely a soulless doll. She was clean, devoid of any fragrance save for the soapwort's freshness on her garments. There was no trace of the floral waters typically favored by young women, nor any hint of scent she herself had crafted. She was like a blank sheet of paper, pure yet unsettlingly empty. Xiao Linyuan could not discern any scent. The vibrant, warm aroma etched in his memory starkly contrasted with the cold, unresponsive woman before him, creating an unbearable dissonance. Suddenly, he comprehended the truth. This fragrance lacked vitality. The woman before him had extracted all her emotions, all her love and hate, all her life force while crafting it. She had bestowed upon him the most exquisite technique, yet also the most complete form of retribution. Shen Zhiwei, he ground out her name through clenched teeth. You possess an audacity unparalleled. At that moment, Gu Qingxi could no longer bear to watch. He stepped forward, cupping his hands. Your Highness, please temper your wrath. Miss Shen has exhausted herself in crafting the fragrance for you, now appearing utterly spent. Having secured the scent, why must you further harm her? Xiao Linyuan whirled around, his gaze sharp as a blade. Do you see Gu Qingxi? It is she who provokes me. She merely fulfilled your request, Gu Qingxi replied. Gu Qingxi's voice was soft yet resonant. Your Highness, what you desire is but a fragment of fragrant soul, yet souls cannot be imprisoned or replicated. What you possess is merely a flawless corpse of fragrance. The term corpse of fragrance struck deeper than the lifelessness of Shen Zhiwei, piercing through Xiao Linyuan's heart like a dagger. He trembled, as if struck by a heavy blow, gradually releasing his grip on Shen Zhiwei, casting his gaze upon the jade-green porcelain vial in his hand, then at the expressionless woman before him. An unprecedented terror seized his heart. Had he truly triumphed? He acquired the long-coveted scent, yet why did he feel that his losses far outweighed his gains? He gazed at Shen Zhiwei's pallid, almost translucent face, suddenly finding it unbearably glaring. He waved his hand, his voice laden with exhaustion and irritation. Leave, take your belongings and go. Shen Zhiwei felt as if granted a great pardon, forgetting her courtesy as she turned to depart. At the door, she paused, turning her head back to nod lightly and swiftly in the direction of Gu Qingxi, a silent gesture brimming with gratitude. Then, without a backward glance, she vanished into the swirling snow. Xiao Linyuan bore witness to this scene, his inner fury igniting with greater ferocity. He smashed the jade-green porcelain vial to the ground. The sound echoed with a crack, and the fragrant liquid splattered, filling the warm chamber with a cold, ethereal scent of death. He had expected to loathe this aroma, yet as it enveloped him, he found himself greedily inhaling it, as if desperate to draw in the last trace of her existence. But he could not discern whether he yearned for the departed Su Qingrou or for the living Shen Zhiwei, who had crafted this lifeless essence with her own hands. The phrase corpse of fragrance lingered like a ghostly whisper, reverberating throughout the empty study, ensnaring every fiber of Xiao Linyuan's being. Shen Zhiwei had departed, leaving behind her perpetually cold aura. Qingrou had also taken his leave, casting a lingering, sorrowful glance that felt like a thorn, piercing through Xiao Linyuan's disarrayed heart. Alone, he remained in the room, surrounded by the chilling and flawless scent of death. He despondently returned to his seat, grasping the treasured lotus-colored silk pouch, bringing it to his nose. The familiar fragrance, imbued with Su Qingrou's warmth and memories, had once been his sole remedy against relentless headaches and haunting nightmares. Yet today, this remedy seemed ineffective. As he inhaled the scattered, deathly aroma, he noted that while both scents bore a striking resemblance, their effects were worlds apart. The pouch's fragrance was alive, warm, reminiscent of Su Qingrou in her final moments, her breath gradually fading, ultimately crystallizing within his memory. In stark contrast, the scent that filled the room was frigid, precise, a public execution of his sacred, untouchable memories, orchestrated by Shen Zhiwei with her all-seeing gaze. How dare she? A wave of fury surged anew. Xiao Linyuan abruptly rose, kicking over the nearby Zeton wood table. Brushes, ink, paper, and precious ornaments shattered upon the floor, creating a chaotic mess. He paced the study like a caged beast, grappling with confusion. He had attained his most coveted possession, yet felt no semblance of satisfaction, only a haunting emptiness. It was akin to a parched soul finally grasping a handful of water, only to discover it was an illusion painted on paper, quenching nothing. He desired snow, and Shen Zhiwei had given him snow. He sought warmth, and she offered warmth. He yearned for enlightenment, and she provided that too. Yet the snow she bestowed lacked the warmth to melt. The warmth she offered bore no burning heat. The enlightenment she granted lacked the essence to guide him. She had transformed his love, longing, and every ounce of obsession and pain into an emotionless recipe for fragrance. Then, with her lifeless eyes fixed upon him, she calmly proclaimed, "Your Highness, what you adore is merely this." This was not submission. It was the pinnacle of contempt. Xiao Linyuan's breathing grew labored as he pressed his forehead, the familiar pang of pain surging from deep within his temples, more intense than ever before. Staggering to the wall, he slammed his fist against the cold surface. Flesh and bone instantly mangled. The pain jolted him into a fleeting clarity. He suddenly recalled Qingrou's words, "Souls cannot be imprisoned or replicated. What you possess is merely a flawless corpse of fragrance." No, it was neither his memory that was flawed, nor Su Qingrou's essence that was amiss. It was Shen Zhiwei. That woman was exacting her revenge, provoking him. She had deliberately stripped the soul from the fragrance, simply to witness his current state of despair. "Very well, Shen Zhiwei. You are quite formidable." A flicker of ruthlessness flashed in Xiao Linyuan's eyes. "You think this will allow you to triumph over me? I shall not grant you that satisfaction. I shall make you watch as I cherish this corpse of fragrance, as I transform you into an utterly useless being, a mere shadow of a waste." Tinglan Courtyard. Shen Zhiwei returned to her modest abode, feeling as though all strength had been drained from her, sliding down to sit against the door. Had she triumphed? Perhaps. Witnessing Xiao Linyuan's shock, anger, and confusion indeed stirred a fleeting sense of vengeful pleasure within her. Yet that pleasure evaporated swiftly, replaced by a profound emptiness. To wound him, she had first extinguished her own essence. She had stripped away her most cherished talents and emotions, transforming into a machine for crafting fragrance, devoid of sentiment. The cost of this victory was a fragment of her very soul. Chills seeped from the cold ground through her thin garments, penetrating to her very marrow. A dull ache throbbed in her knee, a reminder of the recent humiliation she had endured. She retrieved a small white porcelain vial from her bosom. A gift from Qingrou. The vial felt cool to the touch, yet seemed to carry an unusual warmth that soothed her icy palm. She uncorked the vial, releasing a crisp medicinal aroma mingled with earthy undertones, distinct from all the fragrances she had concocted. This scent was pure and unpretentious, imbued with a healing power. Compelled by an unseen force, she rolled up her pant leg. Her knee bore a bruise, an unsightly mark upon her fair skin, a testament to her status as a captive. She squeezed out a bit of verdant ointment, delicately applying it with her fingertip. The ointment felt cool and silky against her skin, and after a moment's hesitation, she began to apply it gently to her injury. As the icy balm met the burning bruise, a strange sense of relief spread through her. She applied it slowly and meticulously, as if the knee were a precious porcelain artifact in need of careful restoration. Her fingertip, laden with ointment, traced gentle circles upon the bruise. Her actions imbued with a tenderness she had not realized she possessed. "No one is born a sinner," Gu Qingxi's gentle and earnest voice echoed in her ears. "Your hands are the treasures of day. They should not be subjected to humiliation." Indeed, her hands, her nose, her very being deserved not to endure such degradation. She could be imprisoned, could be used, but she must not wither away. After applying the ointment, she gazed at her long, clean hands. The palm of her left hand was still wrapped in the bandage Gu Qingxi had tended to. Suddenly, she no longer wished to let these hands touch the lifeless creations born to please others. Rising to her feet, she approached the suffocating fragrance workshop, retrieved the lock, and secured the door with a decisive click. She casually tossed the key into the snow outside. The white snow swiftly enveloped the small copper key, erasing any trace of its existence. From this moment forth, there would no longer be Shen Zhiwei, the fragrance creator for Regent Xiao Linyuan. She would live for herself, even if only for a day, an hour, or a fleeting moment. When Xiao Linyuan summoned Gu Qingxi, the latter was busy organizing herbs in the pharmacy. "What are your orders, Your Highness?" Gu Qingxi inquired as she entered the study, her gaze falling upon the disarray and the glaring wound on Xiao Linyuan's hand. Her brow slightly furrowing, yet she refrained from probing further. "Treat her," Xiao Linyuan stated bluntly, his tone frigid. Gu Qingxi paused, taken aback. "Who?" "Shen Zhiwei," he replied, a hint of impatience creeping into his voice. "Isn't she on the brink of death? Aren't you supposed to have the heart of a healer? Go and cure her for this prince. I want her to live a long and healthy life." Gu Qingxi scrutinized him, her usually gentle eyes now sharp with discernment. Did the prince genuinely wish for her survival, or was he intent on tormenting her in another manner? Xiao Linyuan felt a jolt in his heart under her gaze, as if all his concealed thoughts had been laid bare. He sneered and approached her with an imposing presence. "Gu Qingxi, you seem overly concerned for my prisoner." He lowered his voice, each word laced with warning. "Do not forget your station, and do not forget to whom she belongs." To Gu Qingxi, she was merely a patient. Unflinching, Gu Qingxi met his gaze. "A patient?" Xiao Linyuan scoffed, his laughter rife with malice and possessiveness. "Let me tell you, her illness is caused by me, and its roots lie with me. No one but I can heal her. Your potions and herbs are of no use." He extended his uninjured hand, gently patting Gu Qingxi's cheek, an ambiguous gesture, yet his eyes were cold as ice. "Keep your distance. She belongs to me, and if she is to perish, it shall be by my hand alone. You're not to pity her." Chapter 5. The incense burner of the mortal realm. As Gu Qingxi entered Qingrou with her medicine box, she spotted a small copper key, forlornly cast into the snow. Vanishing in an instant, she halted, her gaze landing on the fragrance room door, locked from the outside, her heart already understanding. She had severed her proud connection to this world with her own hands. What a devastating resolve this was. Upon pushing open the main door, a gust of cold air assaulted her, even more severe than the wind and snow outside. The room was devoid of coal, as frigid as an ice cellar. Shen Zhiwei sat by the window, cradling an empty soup bowl, lost in thought, oblivious to Gu Qingxi's entrance. "Miss Shen," Gu Qingxi spoke softly. Shen Zhiwei trembled slightly and turned her head, her eyes dimming as they met his, returning to a placid state like still water. "Dr. Gu," she stood, attempting to bow, but a sharp pain in her knee caused her to sway. Gu Qingxi hastily stepped forward to steady her, his brow furrowing in concern. "Your knee injury cannot be delayed any longer." He helped her back onto the couch, resolutely squatting down, his gaze fixed on her knee. Shen Zhiwei instinctively tried to pull down her pant leg, but his gentle yet firm hold stopped her. "Do not move." His voice bore the undeniable authority of a healer. Carefully, he rolled up her pant leg, and upon seeing the horrifying bruise, even he, accustomed to pain, found his breath momentarily halted. A thin layer of green ointment covered the bruise, evidently the very remedy he had provided her. The realization that she had used it warmed Gu Qingxi's heart. He retrieved a fresh ointment and a set of delicate silver needles from his medicine box. Speaking softly, "The ointment can only promote blood circulation and alleviate bruising. but the cold has penetrated to the bone. We must use gold needles to expel the chill, or we'll leave a lingering ailment, causing excruciating pain on rainy days. Shen Zhiwei's entire body stiffened. He intended to needle her. In this royal residence, the propriety of gender separation could be lethal, especially given her sensitive status as a prisoner. Is he mad? Or am I mad for not pushing him away at once? Her mind battled fiercely within her. Rationality urged her to reject him without hesitation. Yet her body felt as if it were nailed in place, unable to move. His fingertips, accustomed to the warmth of herbs, brushed against her skin like tiny flames, creating a minuscule breach in her frozen heart. Dr. Gu, she finally regained her voice, hoarse and dry. What you truly seek? Her inquiry was direct and piercing, like a porcupine bristling with defenses. Gu Qingzi paused momentarily, his hand poised over the silver needle. He lifted his gaze, his usually gentle eyes now clear and unwavering. Meeting her scrutiny, I seek understanding, he replied slowly. Shen Zhiwei was taken aback. The first time I saw you was at the Wanxiang conference 3 years ago. Gu Qingxi's voice was soft, as if afraid of disturbing something. You were still the young lady of the Shen family, spirited and proud. You crafted a fragrance named Jijiao, claiming that fragrance possessed a soul, and kindred spirits were hard to find. This scent was only for those destined to receive it. Young lords vied to bid for it, yet you gave it to no one. Shen Zhiwei's eyelashes fluttered gently. That was the most carefree and glorious moment of her life. I stood among the crowd. Gu Qingzi said with a subtle smile, I understood your fragrance. The top notes were as clear as mountain streams. The middle notes were as tranquil as bamboo grows in the rain. But the base notes were resolute as fire and oil. You were not seeking a kindred spirit. You were questioning the world, who among them was worthy of being your confidant. His words acted as a key, precisely unlocking the long-sealed door to her heart. The secret of that fragrance had never been shared with anyone. He had discerned it entirely. A woman capable of creating such an essence should not be reduced to a soulless shadow. Gu Qingzi lowered his eyes and steadily inserted a silver needle into her knee acupoint. Thus, what I seek is merely to preserve that essence, lest it be entirely scattered by this merciless wind and snow. As his words fell, Shen Zhiwei's eyes unexpectedly glistened with unshed tears. It turned out someone truly understood her. In that moment of silence, the slightly ajar door was suddenly flung open with a resounding crash. Xiao Linyuan, enveloped in a flurry of snow, appeared at the threshold like a demon from hell. Having just returned from the palace and hearing that Gu Qingzi had come to Tinglianyuan, he had inexplicably followed her. What he witnessed was a scene that pierced his heart. Gu Qingzi half kneeling on the ground, his expression focused and tender, his hand resting on Shen Zhiwei's bare calf. And Shen Zhiwei, the woman who always appeared so stubborn and indifferent in his presence, now had reddened eyes, clearly showing signs of emotional vulnerability. A surge of uncontrollable fury and jealousy washed over Xiao Linyuan, obliterating all rational thought. What a touching scene of romance, the physician tending to his patient. He stepped forward, each stride sounding like the cracking ice of a frozen lake. His voice was icy, yet a cruel smile adorned his face. I was unaware that Dr. Gu's compassion extended to the point of seeing to the legs of his patients. Gu Qingzi immediately rose, shielding Shen Zhiwei behind him, his demeanor turning frigid. Your Highness, I am merely treating Miss Shen's injury. Treating her? Xiao Linyuan scoffed, his gaze slithering between the two like a venomous snake. Does treating her require her to shed tears for you? Does treating her necessitate your kneeling before her? Gu Qingzi, have I been too lenient with you, allowing you to forget your own identity and forget whose possession she is? She is not a possession. Gu Qingxi's voice suddenly rose, the firmness of his tone a first in his interactions with Xiao Linyuan. This declaration was akin to pouring fuel on flames in Xiao Linyuan's ears. Not a possession? He laughed coldly, advancing fiercely, shoving Gu Qingzi aside, then seizing Shen Zhiwei as if she were a mere chicken, yanking her from the couch before she could react. Shen Zhiwei gasped, the silver needle still embedded in her knee, the sudden tug forcing it deeper, causing her vision to darken from the pain. Your Highness, Gu Qingzi exclaimed, alarmed, attempting to move forward, only to be firmly blocked by two guards who had appeared unbeknownst to him. Xiao Linyuan paid no heed to her suffering. He seized her and dragged her before him, pinching her chin to compel her gaze upon him. His phoenix eyes blazed with a frenzied possessiveness. Shen Zhiwei, have you forgotten? Your life, and that of your family, lies firmly in my grasp. I grant you life, and thus you shall live. I decree your death, and you shall perish. He leaned close to her ear, whispering in a voice only they could discern, laced with venom. I have made you a substitute. Yet you dare present me with a lifeless object. Now, do you have the audacity to entice other men? Your boldness knows no bounds. Shen Zhiwei trembled with pain, yet gritted her teeth, unable to utter a single word. Observing her obstinacy, Xiao Linyuan's fury intensified. Abruptly, he released her and stepped back, surveying her from head to toe with the scrutinizing gaze of one appraising a commodity. Then he chuckled. That smile sent chills down Shen Zhiwei's spine. I suddenly feel that keeping you in this Qingrou garden is a privilege you do not deserve. He dusted off non-existent specks from his sleeve with deliberate slowness and proclaimed in a tone akin to that of a royal decree. Relay the order. The perfumer Shen Zhiwei is incompetent and of no use. Henceforth, she shall not touch any fragrance. Shen Zhiwei's heart sank. What is he planning? She listened as Xiao Linyuan's subsequent words pierced her like the most venomous curse, nailing her to a pillar of shame. Since you are so adept at concocting lifeless objects, from now on, you shall be this king's walking incense burner. Wherever I go, you shall follow. Your sole duty is to ensure that I am perpetually enveloped in the scent of your crafted dead fragrance, whether in council or at rest. The final two words he uttered lightly, yet they carried an unutterably lewd implication. The room fell into an oppressive silence. Shen Zhiwei felt her blood run cold. To be transformed into a living incense tool, suffusing him with the dead fragrance she loathed most, day and night, inseparable. This was a cruelty 100-fold worse than death. 1,000-fold. It was to incinerate her dignity, her pride, her spirit, inch by inch, until nothing remained but ashes. Xiao Linyuan. Gu Qingxi's eyes widened with rage as he struggled desperately. You cannot treat her this way. You are killing her. Killing. Xiao Linyuan turned, casting a scornful glance. No, I am teaching her the true meaning of utilizing resources to their fullest. With that, he disregarded everyone else, seizing Shen Zhiwei's icy wrist and dragging her mercilessly towards the door like a lifeless object. No. Shen Zhiwei finally emitted a desperate wail, thrashing as her other hand clutched the doorframe, her nails carving deep grooves into the wood. Yet her strength was but a feeble resistance against Xiao Linyuan's wrath. He cruelly pried her fingers away and thrust her into the swirling snowstorm outside. Let go of me, Xiao Linyuan. You madman. Let go. Her cries and struggles were swiftly swallowed by the biting wind, leaving only a trail of disordered footprints and shattered despair. Gu Qingxi was firmly pinned in place by the guards, watching helplessly as her fragile figure vanished into the storm, his fist crashing against the ground, blood gushing from his hand, his eyes betraying an unprecedented depth of regret and helplessness. His goodwill today had not only failed to preserve her spirit, but had ignited the flames of her destruction. Chapter 6. Incineration. The snowstorm filled her mouth and nose, as if she had swallowed shards of ice. Shen Zhiwei was tightly gripped by Xiao Linyuan, stumbling through the thick snow. With each step, the buried silver needle in her knee twisted within her flesh, sending waves of excruciating pain that threatened to daze her. She neither struggled nor cried out. In the face of absolute power, all resistance was merely a farcical performance. She allowed herself to be dragged along, as if she were a soulless corpse. Her gaze passed over his broad shoulder, fixating on the quickly concealed footprints behind her and the ever-diminishing outline of Qingrou Garden. Farewell. She silently bid adieu to her small prison. Xiao Linyuan dragged her into his main courtyard, Qinyan Courtyard. Here, the underfloor heating was intense, and warmth enveloped her. Yet Shen Zhiwei felt as if she had been pulled from one icy cavern into a deeper, colder abyss. With a thud, she was brutally tossed to the ground. Her knee slammed against the cold, hard obsidian floor, and the silver needle seemed to burrow deeper, the sharp pain causing her vision to blacken momentarily. Get up. Xiao Linyuan's voice descended from above, devoid of warmth. Shen Zhiwei struggled to rise, managing to get to her feet only by leaning against a frigid pillar, cold sweat trickling down her brow and soaking her hair. Xiao Linyuan regarded her pitiful state with no trace of compassion, only a sickly delight. He strode into the inner chamber, retrieving a bottle of azure porcelain containing the dead fragrance and tossing it at her feet. From now on, this is your domain. He gestured to the vast, luxurious chamber that took one's breath away. Your sole duty is to ensure that wherever I look and smell, it is this scent that pervades. He paused, stepping closer to her strikingly handsome face, a devilish smile playing on his lips. Begin, my human incense burner. Shen Zhiwei lowered her eyes to the bottle at her feet, a masterpiece she had crafted with her own hands. Slowly, she bent down to pick it up. The motion tugged at her knee's injury, causing her lips to lose their color from the pain, yet she suppressed any sound of discomfort. She approached the bronze incense burner in the hall and poured some of the fragrance onto the specially made incense stone. As the stone heated, the cool, ethereal scent wafted upward, spreading swiftly throughout the chamber. She executed her task meticulously, resembling a well-trained palace maid. Xiao Linyuan leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, coldly observing her. He anticipated witnessing her breakdown, her tears, her accusations. Yet she displayed none of it. She acted like a puppet programmed to execute commands flawlessly, her face devoid of expression, her eyes devoid of light. This extreme obedience irritated Xiao Linyuan far more than any fierce rebellion could. What he desired was her suffering, not her demise. The fragrance soon permeated the entire chamber. Xiao Linyuan stepped inside, inhaling deeply. The scent brought him both comfort and agitation. He approached Shen Zhiwei, scrutinizing her overly calm visage, and his pent-up fury ignited further. Not enough, he coldly stated. Shen Zhiwei raised her head, her eyes reflecting a hint of inquiry. This king says it is insufficient. Xiao Linyuan seized her hand, yanking her closer, their proximity alarmingly close. The sharp scent of dragons, saliva, and blood mingled with the pervasive dead fragrance, creating an aggressively invasive aura that ensnared her. How close, she thought, clearly perceiving the blaze of fury in his eyes, along with an unrecognized confusion lurking deep within. This king requires it to be omnipresent. He gripped her wrist with a force that threatened to shatter her bones. This scent must be on me as well. Shen Zhiwei's heart plummeted. She gazed at him, finally speaking, her voice hoarse as though sandpaper had scraped it. My lord, the fragrance may enter clothing, but it must not enter the body. This king commands you to enter. Xiao Linyuan disregarded her explanation entirely, thrusting the bottle of fragrance into her other hand, then raising his wrist before her, commanding, apply it. Shen Zhiwei stood frozen. To touch his esteemed body with these hands he deemed filthy? To defile him with the dead fragrance she loathed, thereby tarnishing herself? This was the most absurd and malicious jest imaginable. Realizing her inaction, Xiao Linyuan's patience evaporated completely. He abruptly seized her hand that clutched the fragrance bottle, forcefully guiding it to pour the chilling perfume upon his wrist. Then he grasped her hand tightly, compelling her fingertips to spread the icy liquid in circles upon his skin. Shen Zhiwei trembled violently, as if struck by a bolt of lightning. His skin radiated warmth, pulsating with vibrant life, while her fingertips were cold as snow. The juxtaposition of this warmth and chill sent tumultuous waves through her stomach. It was a violation more profound than any physical assault. He smeared the perfume with excruciating slowness, acutely aware of her trembling fingertips, the sudden pallor of her face, and the humiliation and disgust that finally surfaced in her lifeless eyes. Yes, that was the expression he sought. A twisted sense of satisfaction burgeoned within him. He desired to witness her anguish, to see her shatter. Remember this feeling, he whispered in her ear, his breath akin to a serpent's flicking tongue. Henceforth, this shall be the essence of your existence. Please me in the manner you loathe the most. His words were like a blunt knife, repetitively carving into her heart. Shen Zhiwei bit her lip fiercely, tasting the metallic tang of blood. She shut her eyes, swallowing all the humiliation and revulsion. When she opened them again, her gaze had returned to a tranquil void. She no longer trembled, allowing him to hold her hand, like a lifeless doll, mechanically completing the act of application. In this manner, she communicated to him, "You may invade my body, but you shall never touch my soul." Xiao Linyuan noticed this subtle change. The flicker of satisfaction within him vanished, replaced by a deeper rage. He abruptly released her hand, as if it had touched something vile. "Go stand over there," he bellowed, pointing towards a corner. "Without my command, you shall not move, sit, or sleep." Shen Zhiwei felt as if she had been granted amnesty. Staggering to the corner and pressing her back against the cold wall, standing motionless, the sharp pain in her knees, the lingering warmth of his touch on her wrist, and the pervasive scent of death in the air formed an invisible net, ensnaring her completely. She had become a true, lifeless entity, a breathing, aching object placed within the confines of her master's chamber. Xiao Linyuan paced back and forth in the hall, eventually seeming to grow weary of the overwhelming fragrance filling the room, as well as the sight of her deathly visage. He swept away, leaving behind a chilling command. Tonight, I shall return. The doors swung shut, and silence reclaimed the chamber. Shen Zhiwei gradually slid down the wall to the floor, clutching her painfully injured leg, burying her face deep into her knees. No tears flowed. Her heart had died, leaving her devoid of weeping. She quietly, with trembling fingers, reached for the silver needle buried deep within her flesh. Then, in a hidden corner, she gritted her teeth and yanked it out, a drop of crimson blood splattering onto her pristine skirt, resembling a despairing red plum blossom quietly blooming in the snow. Chapter 7. The prisoner by the pillow of the night was as dark as spilled ink. In the Qingrou courtyard, even the most fervent heating could not dispel the chill that seeped into Shen Zhiwei's bones. She sat against the wall, cradling her injured leg, like a fledgling bird soaked by a torrential downpour, quietly awaiting her wings to become entirely stiff. The bloodstain on her skirt had dried to a dark brown, resembling a withered plum blossom petal. The pain had faded, or rather, she had grown numb to it. She even found herself pondering her current state, a walking incense burner, a decorative object with warmth. Xiao Linyuan's manipulation was more soul-crushing than death itself. He had transformed her most cherished skill into chains that bound and humiliated her, following her day and night with no escape. So be it, she thought bitterly. One who has died once finds no distinction in dying again. The door creaked open. A gust of cold air carrying the potent scent of alcohol surged in. Xiao Linyuan had returned. He had changed out of his formal robes, now clad in a dark outfit patterned with gold, the collar slightly ajar, revealing a strong, pale neck. He appeared to have consumed a considerable amount of alcohol. His eyes, usually sharp as a hawk's, now glistened with a misty haze, rendering them both dazed and perilous, like a beast lurking in the shadows. He did not glance at her, striding directly to the bedside, his towering figure casting a colossal shadow that enveloped her cowering form in the corner. "Come here," he commanded, his voice slightly hoarse from intoxication, yet retaining its authoritative tone. Shen Zhiwei braced herself against the wall, limping toward him. She lowered her head, staring at her toes, akin to a prisoner awaiting judgment. Xiao Linyuan's gaze fell upon her pallid face. It was the visage he despised most. Yet, inebriated, he found an unsettling allure in her pale lips, a fragile allure that invited plucking. This thought stirred a wave of annoyance within him. He abruptly extended his hand, not to seize her, but to lift the heavy brocade quilt from the bed, leaving only a thin silk cover. "Lie down," he ordered. Shen Zhiwei's body froze instantly. She shot her head up, a crack of shock, humiliation, and disbelief flickering in her lifeless eyes. What does he intend to do? Not comprehending? Seeing her immobility, Xiao Linyuan smirked cruelly, revealing a remnant of a smile. "My human incense burner naturally belongs by my side." He aimed to obliterate her dignity in this manner, making her lie beside him, yet rendering her nothing more than a tool for warming the bed, merely an object exuding the scent of death. Shen Zhiwei's fingertips felt as if they might shatter from the cold. She gazed at the expansive bed, large enough for 10 people to roll about, only to perceive it not as a bed, but as a coffin prepared for her living burial. She did not move. Xiao Linyuan's patience waned. He seized her arm and violently hurled her onto the bed. Ack! The injured knee collided once more, causing Shen Zhiwei to emit a muffled groan and curl up. "Lie flat, turn away," his icy voice rang out again. "Should you dare make a sound, or even glance at me, I shall ensure your father and brother vanish from the dungeons without delay." The lives of her family were the most effective weapon in his grasp. Shen Zhiwei's body ceased trembling. Slowly, inch by inch, she straightened her form. Then, she turned away, curling herself at the very edge of the bed, as though occupying any additional space was a sacrilege. She shut her eyes, transforming herself into a true piece of wood, a mere stone. Soon, she sensed the mattress behind her suddenly sink. Xiao Linyuan lay down. The vast bed, now occupied by another person, felt unbearably constricted, suffocating. His searing warmth seeped through the thin fabric, continuously radiating towards her. His breath, laced with the scent of alcohol and dragon saliva, brushed against her nape, provoking involuntary shivers. So hot, like a branding iron. She dared not move, her body taut as a string on the verge of snapping. She could distinctly hear the steady, powerful beating of his heart contrasting sharply with her own, which had long since fallen silent. Time at this moment stretched interminably. Each minute and second became an agony. Xiao Linyuan, too, could not find rest. He had anticipated that displaying this woman as a trophy by his side would grant him a sense of omnipotence. Yet, the reality was that he felt more restless. The sweet scent of soap combined with the pervasive deathly aroma he had forced her to concoct formed a bizarre and contradictory fragrance, invading his nostrils, failing to alleviate his headache, instead making his nerves twitch uncontrollably. And she lay there, as docile as a corpse. No tears, no resistance. Even her breathing was so faint it was nearly imperceptible. This made him feel as if he were clutching a searing hot iron, attempting to scorch a block of eternal ice. Only he was left burned. Time passed without his notice, and the breaths behind him gradually became steady and elongated. He fell asleep. In this moment, Shen Zhiwei, whose body had been tense, finally dared to relax for a brief moment. She slowly opened her eyes, only to be met with an oppressive darkness, her ears attuned to his rhythmic breathing. Madman, she silently cursed in her heart. Just then, the person behind her suddenly stirred. A scorching arm, imbued with an irresistible force, fiercely wrapped around her waist, dragging her backward. Shen Zhiwei's back collided instantly with a hard, heated chest. Fear sent her spirits soaring, and blood rushed to her head. Qingrou, came a muddled murmur from above, filled with endless pain and fragility. He was calling out the name of another woman in his dreams. Shen Zhiwei froze in his embrace, utterly motionless. It turned out that even in slumber, she was merely a substitute for another woman. A profound and indescribable sorrow, mingled with absurdity, engulfed her. Yet the arm encircling her waist tightened even more, as if grasping a lifeline, exuding a sense of almost desperate dependence. His face unconsciously buried itself in her neck, his heated breath cascading against her skin. An unguarded vulnerability, starkly contrasting with the brightness of day. Shen Zhiwei's heart, the one she believed to be long dead, unexpectedly thudded heavily at this moment. Chapter 8. The scent of betrayal. That unwelcome heartbeat splashed like hot oil into an icy lake. The immediate sting was followed by a deeper, more profound silence. Shen Zhiwei remained frozen in Xiao Linyuan's burning embrace, afraid to move. What do you expect, Shen Zhiwei? She mocked herself inwardly. Do you long for a fleeting warmth from a madman in his dreams? Do not forget, he speaks the name of another woman. You are merely a human-shaped fur coat he grabbed for warmth. The dawn light seeped through the cracks of the window, diluting the inky darkness of night into a grayish morning hue. The breathing behind her remained steady, the scent of alcohol dissipating significantly. It was time to awaken. Shen Zhiwei, like a startled rabbit, began to test her strength to escape this confining embrace. With all her might, she attempted to inch away from the arm that encircled her waist, moving slowly and stiffly. However, that arm was as heavy as mountains, even in sleep, exuding an irresistible possessiveness. Her struggles only prompted him to tighten his hold unconsciously, his cheek brushing against her neck like a wild beast finding its stable den. That fleeting contact sent shivers down Shen Zhiwei's spine. She gave up. She lay there with her eyes wide open, watching the light transition from gray to a fishbelly white and then to a soft golden hue. She listened to the first chirping of the birds outside the palace, the distant rustling of sweeping in the courtyard, and to her heart, forcibly awakened, that sank back into silence. Time slipped away unnoticed until she sensed movement behind her. It was not a sudden awakening for drunkenness, but rather a leisurely stretching of waking naturally. The arm around her loosened, and a deep, drowsy voice emerged from above her head. What time is it? Shen Zhiwei's body instantly tensed like a board. He was awake, and he was still holding her. The air thickened. 1 second, 2 seconds. Xiao Linyuan seemed to finally realize what he was embracing. He looked down and saw a delicate, pale neck and a cascade of dark hair spread across the pillow. The clean scent of Shen Zhiwei, mixed with the fragrance of soap pods, rudely invaded his nostrils. Memories of the previous night surged back like a tide. He had slept with this woman all night. No hedak, no nightmares. It was the most restful night he had enjoyed in 5 years since Su Qingrou's death. This realization set off alarm bells in his mind, igniting a sense of offended anger. He abruptly released her, pushing Shen Zhiwei away as if she were something filthy. Shen Zhiwei tumbled off the edge of the bed, landing heavily on the carpet. The impact re-aggravated her knee injury, sending pain shooting through her, yet she bit her lip to stifle any sound. "Who allowed you to be so close to me?" Xiao Linyuan sat up, his voice raspy from sleep and laced with undisguised disgust. "You, human incense burner," seemed to be getting bolder. Shen Zhiwei supported herself on the ground, slowly rising without defending or contradicting herself. Her submissive demeanor once again ignited Xiao Linyuan's wrath. He threw off the bed covers and approached her, towering over her as he scrutinized her. "We have an early morning court session today." He raised his hand, snatching the ceremonial robes from the hanger, tossing them into her arms. Incense. It was a dark ceremonial robe embroidered with a golden four-clawed dragon, made from the finest cloud silk, smooth and cool to the touch. Shen Zhiwei clutched the garment, her fingertips trembling slightly. To use the scent I despise most to taint his most glorious attire. What a cruel irony this was. She approached the incense burner, carefully using a silver stick to scoop a small amount of incense paste, delicately applying it to the inner lining and cuffs of the robe. Her movements were graceful and professional, akin to completing a work of art. She was close enough to smell the lingering alcohol on him and the distinct, chilling scent that belonged solely to him. With her eyes downcast, her long lashes concealed all emotion. Yet Xiao Linyuan keenly detected the moment her fingertips stiffened and resisted upon touching the icy cloud silk. That was sufficient. He intended for her to live in this torment day and night. After applying the incense, he donned the ceremonial robe, and his entire aura instantly transformed into one of authority and detachment. He did not spare her a glance as he strode out, leaving behind a cold command at the door. "Follow me." Shen Zhiwei was taken aback. "I am heading to the study to handle state affairs." He turned back, his gaze frigid. My human incense burner must naturally be at my side at all times. He intended to bring her to the study, a place more public than the sleeping quarters, a true representation of his core power. He wanted her to be displayed like an ornament before his high-ranking subordinates. Shen Zhiwei's heart sank to the depths. In the study, several trusted generals had already been waiting for quite some time. Upon seeing Xiao Linyuan enter with a wan, unsteady woman trailing behind him, they were all taken aback, yet none dared to ask questions, bowing in unison. "Be seated." Xiao Linyuan took his place at the head of the table, casually gesturing to a pear-wood stool in the corner. "You stand there." His tone resembled that of instructing a pet. Shen Zhiwei obediently walked to the corner, standing with her hands down, transforming herself into an unfeeling background. The meeting commenced. The discussion revolved around the allocation of military supplies for the northern border, filled with martial rhetoric and decisive commands. These terms, once so far removed from her, now echoed in her ears. And she, a once renowned perfumer, daughter of a trader, now stood here in the most humiliating manner, merely a listener. She could feel the gazes of the generals upon her, filled with curiosity, disdain, or pity, piercing her like needles. She could only let her gaze drift, fixating on the patterns of a brick on the ground, attempting to withdraw her very soul. Time slipped by unnoticed until the meeting concluded, and the generals began to take their leave. The last to remain was General Lin Xiao, a man nearing 50, a brother who had fought alongside Xiao Linyuan through blood and battle, one of the few who dared to speak the truth in his presence. Lin Xiao did not leave immediately. He looked at Xiao Linyuan with a complex expression, hesitating to speak. "Do you have something to say?" Xiao Linyuan lifted his teacup, blowing away the foam. Lin Zhao's gaze swept over Shen Zhiwei in the corner, faint yet perceptive, before he lowered his voice. "Your Highness, forgive my boldness, but the scent you bear today." Xiao Linyuan paused momentarily, the teacup in his hand trembling slightly. "What of it? I recognize this fragrance." Lin Zhao's expression revealed no hint of nostalgia. Instead, a weight of seriousness and confusion settled upon him. "It is the scent of Su Junyi from years past, though it seems somewhat altered." Xiao Linyuan's phoenix eyes narrowed sharply. "In what way is it different?" Lin Xiao inhaled deeply, his brow furrowing even more. Su Junyi's fragrance is cool yet vibrant, akin to flowers blooming in the snow, a scent that embodies the essence of healing. Yet, Your Highness, this scent, while similar, carries a trace of malice, an essence of decay. Prolonged exposure induces unease. Decay. The repetition of the word struck Xiao Linyuan like a physical blow. He whipped around, his gaze cutting through the air like twin blades, aimed directly at Shen Zhiwei in the corner. A chill ran through Shen Zhiwei, and instinctively, she gripped her sleeves tighter. As he discovered it, unaware of the tumultuous undercurrents between them, Lin Xiao continued. I recall that Su Junyi mentioned her fragrance was concocted from numerous rare herbs from the far north, with a key ingredient known as Huan Hun Xiao, said to possess the power of resurrection. She claimed this was the soul of the scent. I wonder what this lady. Before he could finish, Xiao Linyuan abruptly stood, striding towards Shen Zhiwei in a few swift steps. He seized her wrist with a grip so fierce it felt as though he might crush her bones. In his eyes, the haze of confusion and irritation evaporated, leaving only a chilling intensity of interrogation and suspicion. He fixed his unwavering stare upon her, each word emerging like a dagger from his lips. What is Huan Hun Xiao? What else do you conceal within this fragrance? Chapter 9. The Deception of the Fragrance of Souls. What is Huan Hun Xiao? Xiao Linyuan's voice sliced through the air like an ice-forged blade, each syllable piercing Shen Zhiwei's eardrums. His grip on her wrist was astonishingly tight, his searing heat threatening to sear her very bones. In the study, the atmosphere thickened, solid as iron. General Lin Xiao stood nearby, his expression a mixture of shock and regret, clearly taken aback by the tempest his casual remark had ignited. Shen Zhiwei stumbled slightly, almost collapsing against his unyielding chest. The scent of his fury intensified, mingling with the deathly fragrance she had crafted, creating a grotesque and despairing resonance. So he has ultimately discovered the essence of Huan Hun Xiao. Surprisingly, she felt no fear. Instead, a sense of weary resignation arose within her, accompanied by a hidden anticipation for the moment he would tear apart the beautiful illusion she had woven over the past 5 years. And she wondered what expression would grace his handsome face. Answer me. With her silence, Xiao Linyuan's fury ignited further. He yanked her closer, their faces mere inches apart. The madness burning in his eyes threatened to engulf her. What other tricks do you hide within this fragrance? His breath, laced with destruction, fanned across her face. Finally, Shen Zhiwei lifted her gaze. For the first time, her eyes, resembling still waters, met Xiao Linyuan's without evasion or dread. Instead, they reflected the twisted, contorted image of his current anguish. Rather than respond to his questions, she spoke in a tone nearly devoid of emotion, gently inquiring, Your Highness, do you truly wish to uncover the truth? Her voice, though soft, grazed his most fragile and sensitive nerves like a feather. Silence. Xiao Linyuan's voice thundered, as if struck by a painful realization. I demand an answer, not your cryptic riddles. Speak. What is Huan Hun Xiao? Shen Zhiwei regarded him, observing the man imprisoned by false memories for 5 long years. Noting the stubbornness and concealed fear in his eyes, a sudden wave of amusement washed over her. Gradually, she articulated the answer capable of shattering his entire world. Your Highness, Huan Hun Xiao does not exist. The words landed with a thunderous impact. Xiao Linyuan froze, even his grip on her loosening slightly. He seemed unable to comprehend or believe what he had just heard. What did you say? Shen Zhiwei enunciated each word with deliberate clarity, her tone laced with a cold, almost cruel pity. Huan Hun Xiao is merely a fabrication. A beautiful lie spun by Miss Su Qingrou. You lie. Xiao Linyuan finally reacted, shoving her away so forcefully that, had she not steadied herself against the bookshelf behind her, she would have fallen again. His eyes burned with fury, resembling an enraged lion. You envy her. You cannot bear to see me treat her well, so you defame her. Shen Zhiwei, your heart is truly wicked. Lin Xiao, witnessing the unfolding scene, felt a surge of alarm. He rushed forward, hands clasped in a gesture of supplication. Your Highness, please calm your anger. Perhaps Miss Shen is mistaken. She is not mistaken. Shen Zhiwei interrupted Lin Xiao's attempt at mediation, her unwavering gaze fixed on Xiao Linyuan. Huan Hun Xiao does exist in folklore, but its scientific name is Gui Jianqiu. It is a common weed born in damp, shadowy places. devoid of any extraordinary fragrance or resurrection properties. On the contrary, it possesses a mild toxin that, upon prolonged exposure, can induce disorientation and dependency. She paused, unveiling a more ruthless truth. Su Jinyi's skill in fragrance crafting is not remarkable. She is merely astute, understanding Your Highness well. She employs the coolness of Longyan to resonate with your lofty spirit, the calming qualities of agarwood to alleviate your headaches, and the scent she refers to as Huan Hun Chao to cultivate an inescapable dependence on this aroma and on her person. What she concocted was never a fragrance capable of resurrection. Shen Zhiwei's voice rang clear in the hushed study, akin to a devil's judgment. Rather, it was a poison designed to ensnare your soul. It was not love. It was manipulation, a calculated strategy. I cannot concoct such a soul, nor would I desire to. Thus, what I provided you was merely a flawless, soulless essence of fragrance. In that moment, the world fell silent. Xiao Linyuan stood motionless, as if all strength and spirit had been drained from him. The color drained from his face, rendering him paler than Shen Zhiwei. His prideful love, his unwavering white moonlight, his obsession that had endured for 5 years, his sole comfort in life, all shattered by this woman's calm words. It was all a deception. That pure, immaculate love was a meticulously orchestrated ruse. The white moonlight who sacrificed herself to save him was merely a woman skilled in the art of manipulation. He had not been loved, he had been played. For 5 years, he had been like a fool, weeping over a counterfeit, a mere jest. A broken sob escaped his throat, and he staggered back a step. No, it cannot be. What you say is false. He gazed at Shen Zhiwei. His expression transformed from pure anger and disgust to a complex melange of emotions. Shock at being deceived, confusion as his beliefs crumbled, and a hint of vulnerability. An unrecognized plea for reassurance that this was not true. Leave? After a prolonged silence, he managed to force out a single word through gritted teeth. Lin Xiao felt as though a great weight had been lifted, bowing deeply before hastily retreating from the suffocating study. As the door closed behind him, only the two of them remained. Xiao Linyuan did not turn to look at her again, but instead wandered to the window, his back to her, his shoulders trembling slightly. Shen Zhiwei observed his tall figure, which stood rigid yet exuded a profound sense of fragility, and felt no joy in her perceived victory, only a hollowing emptiness. Had she won? She could not say. All she knew was that from this day forth, she was no longer even a substitute, because the one being imitated has already crumbled within his heart. Chapter 10. The Shattered Shrine. In the study, an eerie silence prevailed. The wind and snow outside seemed to have ceased, leaving only a suffocating expanse of white. Shen Zhiwei gazed at Xiao Linyuan's silhouette, once as towering as a mountain, capable of upholding the entire Yi court, now exuding an aura of precarious fragility. His shoulders trembled slightly, not from the cold, but from suppressing a storm potent enough to annihilate the world. She had triumphed. In a most ruthless manner, she had won this silent war. Yet, her heart bore no trace of joy, only a desolate wasteland scorched by flames. Like an assassin, she had exerted all her strength to drive the dagger into her enemy's heart, only to find her own hands stained with blood and flesh upon withdrawal. She had anticipated his wrath, expected him to turn and pounce upon her like an enraged lion, tearing her to shreds. However, he did not. After a long pause, he slowly turned, inch by inch. In that moment, Shen Zhiwei felt her heart ensnared by an invisible hand. His expression was devoid of emotion. No anger, no sorrow, not even hatred. That exceptionally handsome face resembled a jade sculpture stripped of its spirit, leaving only a hollow, haunting calm. His eyes, usually ablaze with flames and tempered with frost, now resembled two empty wells, devoid of anything within. He looked at her, his gaze unfocused, as if peering through her at some void. Then he smiled. It was not a cold smirk, nor a derisive laugh, but an exceedingly light, eerily innocent smile, tinged with childlike naivete and confusion. It was all a facade, wasn't it? He seemed to be conversing with himself. His voice so soft it was almost inaudible, yet sharp and clear enough to pierce Shen Zhiwei's eardrum. He approached her. His steps were steady, showing no hint of stumbling. Yet instinctively, Shen Zhiwei felt the urge to retreat. She leaned against the cold bookshelf, with no escape left. He stood before her, his towering figure casting a complete shadow over her. He lowered his head, drawing near, examining her face with the scrutinizing gaze of a connoisseur assessing a rare artifact. "Can your nose truly discern so many scents?" he suddenly inquired, his voice chillingly calm, probing not about the returning soul herb or Su Qingrou, but an entirely unrelated question. Shen Zhiwei remained silent, watching him warily. He seemed not to require an answer, continuing on his own. "Then tell me, what do you perceive from this king? He has truly lost his mind." Shen Zhiwei's heart sank. An enraged Xiao Linyuan was not frightening. What was terrifying was a Xiao Linyuan whose rationality had collapsed, rendering his actions utterly unpredictable. Noticing her silence, he did not grow angry. Instead, he extended his hand, that very hand which once wielded life and death, and had also brutally humiliated her, now gently caressing her cheek with a curious exploration. His fingertips were cold, a stark contrast to the heat of his previous fury. That touch made Shen Zhiwei's blood run cold. It was more terrifying than any physical assault. "Let this king guess," he said, as if engaged in an intriguing game, his fingers gliding from her brow to her nose, finally resting on her cold lips, gently stroking them. "You smell the scent of dragon's saliva, a fragrance I am accustomed to. You also detect the deathly aroma that you concocted, which has now entirely overshadowed my scent, as if you have clothed me in a prison garment of fragrance." Moreover, his fingertips lingered on her lips, the gesture ambiguous, yet his expression was alarmingly vacant. "You also smell a fool, a grand joke, do you not?" His voice carried an eerie self-mockery. Shen Zhiwei could no longer maintain her composure. She abruptly turned her head, attempting to evade his touch. Yet he was quicker, firmly grasping her chin with a gentle but unyielding force, compelling her face back to meet his gaze. "Look at this king." His voice turned suddenly cold, and within those hollow eyes, a flicker of emotion surged forth. Not anger, but a profound, bottomless agony. "Tell this king, what do you see in these eyes?" He stared intently at her, like a drowning man desperately seeking confirmation of his existence from another's gaze. Shen Zhiwei was compelled to look into his eyes. She saw the wretched version of herself reflected there, and deep within his pupils, the shrine, named Su Qingrou, was crumbling. Piece by piece, disintegrating into dust. Behind the shrine was a pitiful soul, devoid of faith, barely able to stand. Pitiful, the moment that word arose from her heart. Shen Zhiwei was taken aback. She could not believe she felt pity for this man. "You see it, do you not?" He noted the shift in her expression and suddenly began to laugh, a hoarse sound akin to a broken bellows. "You see a joke. A grand fool who has guarded a poison for 5 years, mistaking it for a life-saving remedy." He laughed, yet the corners of his eyes turned red, not with tears, but with a crimson hue that spread like blood, imbuing him with a hauntingly beautiful fragility. "Shen Zhiwei," he called her name suddenly, his voice light as a sigh. "You have destroyed it. You have obliterated the only light this king possessed." He was not accusing her. He was merely stating a fact. Then he released her, staggering back 2 steps as if unable to support himself, collapsing into the grand chair behind him. He propped his forehead with his hand, his body trembling violently from the depths of his anguish. "Ha ha 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 ha." He began to laugh, transitioning from a low, muffled chuckle to an uncontrollable cackle. The laughter reverberated through the empty study, a heart-wrenching, desperate sound akin to a dying beast emitting its final lament. Shen Zhiwei stood there, watching him convulse with laughter, nearly sliding from his chair. She suddenly felt as though the dagger she had plunged into him had also pierced her own heart. It hurt. Time passed, though she could not tell how long, when the laughter abruptly ceased. Xiao Linyuan raised his head, bloodshot eyes making him appear as though he had just clawed his way from the depths of hell. He looked at her, his gaze regaining some of its former coldness and obsession, yet beneath it lay an emptiness reduced to ashes. "You have won," he rasped. "You have successfully rendered this king utterly destitute." Thus, as a consequence of obliterating everything this king held dear, he slowly stood, step by step, approaching her once more. The familiar, suffocating sense of oppression descended upon her again. "You shall be responsible for recreating it for this king." Shen Zhiwei's heart leapt to her throat. This king no longer wishes to smell that false returning soul fragrance, nor do I wish to detect your repugnant, deathly scent. He stood before her, each word enunciated clearly, proclaiming his latest and most absurd command. "This king demands that you concoct a scent of Wangchuan." "Wangchuan?" Shen Zhiwei gazed at him in disbelief. Indeed, Wang Chuan. He offered a cruel smile, a fragrance that allows this king to forget everything. Forget Su Qingrou, forget those 5 years, forget how ridiculous a fool this king once was. If you can concoct it, this king shall release your entire family. If you cannot, he paused, a flicker of madness igniting in his eyes. This king shall ensure that you and your family experience what it truly means to possess nothing and live a life worse than death.